All right. Hello. Hello, everybody, and welcome to my new video. And what is this video about? This video is about Ned Rush, the kind of godfather of experimental Ableton videos. If you are, and you probably are, a watcher of Ned Rush's channel, you probably know that he has been live streaming a device or app he's making in Max MSP called Host. And recently on Ned Rush's Patreon, he has released the kind of first few public versions that are in beta. So I'm doing a video on one of those versions, and I believe this is the most up-to-date version as of recording. Host is this kind of fun Groovebox which feels quite centered around IDM, maybe, or just fun electronic music. I would rather call it that, actually. Yeah, it's centered around fun electronic music and a lot of probability-based stuff and a lot of chance-based stuff. You know, if you watch Ned Rush, it's very Ned Rush. That's the best way I can put it. There's a drum break chopper. Every device has probability built into it somewhere. The playback has probability built into it. Everything is very quintessentially Ned. Now, before we get into it, I do also want to mention this isn't going to be like an in-depth tutorial on how to use it, because there's this button right here, and what does that stand for? That stands for there is no f***ing manual, and as you can see here, there's a little explanation on why. So, I don't know if it's particularly in the spirit to do an in-depth, here's how to use Host. But, you know, I try my best. The layout of this video is going to be an introduction to each device whilst I'm making it for a bigger patch, if that makes sense. So the drum machine, as I'm kind of taking you through how to use it, we'll then use that in the track. Anyway, a bit of information is that you can download Host now on Ned Rush's Patreon at the lowest tier of subscription, which I can't remember, but it's pretty cheap and really worth it. He has every Ableton set he's done is on his Patreon. He's got God knows how many samples and sample packs. There's Max for Live devices, there's Max patches, there's obviously Host. There's a whole array of stuff and a great little community. So if you would like to pick up Host, go grab it on Ned's Patreon. You know who else has a Patreon? Me. So, this video came out a week earlier on my Patreon. My Patreon also has samples, devices, and blah, 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 whatnot, all that fun stuff. But I do want to say thank you to my Patrons, because at the time of recording, I believe there are 31 of you, and that is actually quite a lot of people. It's wild, and I am very, incredibly, humongously appreciative of your support and continuing support. There are some people who've been subscribed to it for a very long time now, and yeah, it's just wild. So thank you very much. And yeah, you know what? Let's just get into it. Let's get into this cool Groovebox that will destroy. Alright, so this is Host, and as you can see here, we've got our start, stop, our tempo, our audio options, window options, and this cool color changing thing here. And when you press mirror color, it will mirror that color for all of the instruments too, but you know, we'll get into that bit later. You got scales, and we'll also get into that a bit later too, but let's just get into our first instrumental machine, which is our drum machine. So let's draw in a kind of typical drum and bass drum beat, 16th note hi-hats, 2 and 4 snare, yeah, and start our transport. And as you can see, we've got nothing. So we need to go here and select our samples. And as you can see, Ned Rush has provided us with a lot of samples. So there's a lot to choose from, but still, there's nothing. I'm only showing this because for some reason this stumped me, even though it's quite obvious. There's just a decay knob on each voice. I don't know why that stumped me for so long, but I thought I'd leave it in the video. Just in case. Lovely. For the kick and snare, there is also this ducking button here, which just sends it into the ducking module, which is like a sidechain compression kind of thing. And each voice also has a DJ filter with its own resonance too. If you don't know, a DJ filter is just a high-pass and a low-pass filter, depending on where the knob is, as you can hear. Alright, so we've also got these kind of time measures here. So let's select one of them and see what happens. Let's also click auto, and there we go. Depending on what time measure you put in, it will change the samples. So for 1 bar, as we've got here, every 1 bar the samples will change. And you'll notice that is quite a big part of Host, is probability and time-based changes and weighted probability graphs and all that. But we'll get into that a bit more in a bit. I've also got this preset table down here where you can save and load your presets. And then if we click and drag on these red gradients underneath each voice, that is our probability. It also, I think, seems like the lower the probability, the lower the volume, I think. Maybe that's just in my head, though. Either way, that's where you put in your probability for each drum voice. Alright, our next machine is quite a big one. It's Mono Machine. As you can tell, this is a kind of bass-focused monosynth. So let's click on the first preset where it's kind of the most bare bones one out of the lot. And as you can see, I'm putting stuff into the pitch sequencer, but nothing's happening. That's because we need to go down into our mod matrix and patch pitch sequencer into pitch and turn the value up. There we go, perfect. It's a little bit modular, it's fun. What else have we got? We've got our decay amp down here. Then here we have our triggers, and for each of these kind of sequences, there is a number to the right, and that is the length of steps. So here we have set our trigger sequencer to 5 steps. The oscillator is a wavetable oscillator, so we can change the position of that too. We can change the octave of it. There's also drive. Sorry, I'm just kind of jumping around this a little bit. We also have volume for a second oscillator and a G-tune for that oscillator, and we can pick it to be the same octave or an octave up, and we can also introduce a sub-oscillator too. Yeah, that sounds beefy. There is also an FM oscillator, where we can change the position of that too, and we can change the amount or the frequency, and then these buttons down here are kind of like the pitch or the octave. Like an operator, we can also pick it to be a fixed frequency. So now let's have a look at this mod matrix down here. Let's patch in sequencer 1 into decay time. So if we have that really short and then sequence in some longer notes, I don't really like how they're ringing out though, if you know what I mean. So we just need to go up here and change that from step to trig. So our trigger sequencer is doing all of the triggering, if that makes sense. These red circles above each one is a random. And now we've got this cool kind of, not really a polymeter, but it's taking the information from the 16-step pitch sequencer and only triggering it with 5 steps. Good fun. And now we're getting a bit funky because our sequencer 1 is doing the decay time, but we have our decay time all the way down, so it's a step sequenced amp envelope. It's really fun. And now I'm just adding some more stuff and messing around with the filters. And if you ask me, that sounds funky and cool. Woo! Yeah, that's cool. There's also a compressor on the master. I think it's Ableton's drum bus, but in max. Next machine. This is classic Ned Rush. This is a break choppage machine. So we have our sequencer up here. We can chop a break to 16 steps or 8, as you can see down there. And we can also randomize our steps. So let's select 8 steps and randomize them a bit for a bit of fun. You can also change how fast they go, so double time or half time. And then up here, I'm not too sure how this works, but this is also kind of like in our drum machine one, where we have a random sample pick. This one randomly picks certain breaks. I'm not too sure how it works though. I do apologise. But I click stuff and it sounds good. You know, like the TINFM said, there is no manual. Anyway, down here, what have we got? Well, we've got this switcher slider, and that brings us into our kind of looping and volume thing. So as you can see, we have two tables here, and they are like weighted probability tables. So this one is our sort of volume shape, or our amp envelope, I guess. Where you have full, ramp up, ramp down, 16th notes, 8th notes, or nothing. And then you can kind of weight the probability of them like this. And then on this side, this is the loop size version of that. And as you can see, our switcher slider is all the way to the right, so we're only getting the looped audio. We can change how quickly the weighted probability changes between loop size and volume. So as you can see here, I'm selecting 8th notes. And here is our kind of sample offset. And again, it's very nicely presented. But you can also do weighted probability with this too by drawing in the same table. And that switcher slider thing also seems to be based on probability rather than a fader. And then if we put the switcher somewhere in the middle, sometimes we'll have just the sequencer, and other times we will have the loop section thing too. Here's another example, I'm just having a bit of fun. As you can hear, I've pulled the tempo up, and the breaks are repitching, so that's how they're warping, which for faster tempos is perfect. Anyway, next device. This is the polysynth. This is kind of simple and kind of really not. So as you can see, we've got these kind of flashing lines up here. I believe that is what's triggering each note. Anyway, we have amp envelope, filter envelope, oscillator mixer, and filter mixer. You can also switch our octaves and increase the pulse width of the triggers. I think they are audio triggers, so maybe if you know Max, maybe they're done in Gen, I think. Anyway, we have our pitch phase up here, gate phase and velocity phase. That is how often they trigger, I believe. This is what I meant by the synth itself is kind of simple, but the way it triggers is, I'm finding quite confusing. We also have a chance and a slide function, which is great, and a random function. I've got to be honest, the triggering of polysynth is slightly confusing. Not to use, but to explain. It's quite intuitive to use, actually, just explaining it is hard. But, you know, we have our rhythmic values for when things are being triggered. And apart from that, the kind of bones of the synth are just normal subtractive synthesis. You've got your oscillators, your filters, and then your filter and amplitude envelopes. So, you know, pretty good. Alright. So this is the patch I got to, but there's also this patch table thing. So let's save our preset, enable preset probability, and then if we draw in the sliders, it will randomly pick what preset we're on based on our time. Or you can press the red circle, and that will select a new preset for you. But I think that's really cool. So let's just go back to our preset for now. And let's get on to string synth. This is a Car Plus strong synth, also done in Gen. Also done in Gen? This one is done in Gen. Either way, it triggers the same, or at least it looks like it triggers the same. And it's got everything a Car Plus strong synth needs. You've got multiple voices. You've got string 1 and 2 decay. You've also got dampening and detunes, and again, it's kind of simple, but also really not simple. The triggering stuff confuses me a bit. Ned Rush, if you're watching, I do apologise for the bad explanation. Either way, it's good fun. If you're into Autechre, you should definitely get into Carplus Strong Synthesis. They seem to do it quite a lot. And yeah, dampening the frequencies, detuning it a little bit. We also have a volume to filter, which is really, really nice. I'm assuming that's a kind of threshold thing for the dampening. Anyway, next device is called YouTube, and this is what happens when you first open it up. So let's go to Google Chrome, and let's get the man himself, Ned Rush. Let's get an interview of his. Yeah, fellow passenger. I like the fellow passenger and Ned Rush. Let's get them. Let's go back to our YouTube instrument, paste the YouTube link into there, and then press this button or bang to send it into the device, and then we get it on YouTube. And what's cool about this is
the fellow passenger. Today I'm speaking to Ned Rush.
As you can probably hear there, the cool thing is that it's got like this kind of auto-tune thing on it.
I understand that, you know, like 5 or 6 years ago, you started posting videos.
Yeah, it's got auto-tune.
Yes.
Nice. So let's switch our scale to D sharp Dorian, and on this string synth, let's bring in Resoverb. This is a send effect, so let's send it and let's get the return back.
I suppose. If you would rewind even further, like how did you...
Okay, let's turn, sorry, Ned and fellow passenger, let's turn you down for a sec. This Resoverb is, well, a resonant reverb, but you can also generate a sequence for it, which is nuts, having your reverb be sequenced like that. And then we've got filtering, a res in, and a drive, and then the full Resoverb parameter, and a filter out, res out, and blah blah blah. Let's go to our polysynth though, and there's also a delay. This is kind of your standard delay, with your time, feedback, filter, and resonance. And as you can see, this also has that preset probability table thingy. But what is this IFX at the bottom? Well, that's an insert effect. So let's grab the one insert effect that's there, and it's Ned FX. As you can see here, nothing's really happening, so let's bring tweak up.
Yeah.
Haha. Alright, so now I am just bringing more stuff in, and I don't know, just like this one I'm randomizing our mono synth to be really glitchy, and this one I'm getting another polysynth and just clicking stuff. Cool. Now, I love this bit. This is the lucky ride. So let's set our time to 4 bars, and we'll get a ride symbol every 4 bars. By the way, I had a look at Host in Max, and that... the rides aren't even samples, it's a synth. So, if I click this button, it randomly will mute certain channels, as you can see, and there's a list of rhythmic values again. So let's match that with our lucky ride at 4 bars. And every time we get that ride, we'll have different channels muted and unmuted. See, how cool is that? You can't tell me that's not cool. Okay, so this loop section up here, let's set our loop to 4 bars and arm the looping button. As you can see, it's recording all 8 channels in. So how do we hear that loop? We pull this slider all the way up, but we're hearing nothing. So let's go into our volume box here and pull up the volume for each channel. As you can see, the loop length works per channel too. So now we are listening to the loop rather than the instruments. And they also have the rhythmic values. So let's set that to quarter notes and auto loop length. Now things are randomly being different loop lengths, and let's do the same for the offset, but I accidentally clicked 4 bars, oh well. And then every 1 bar will have random muting. How cool is that? How cool is that? So, with that slider, you can either select it to be the switcher slider, or you can sequence it here.
Promoting it
And this also has its rhythmic values here.
and you know, it really was just kind of a hobby. And then I went to university. I think I was quite.
So the upper boxes are our loop, and the bottom boxes are the kind of live instruments, if that makes sense. And then you can get happy accidents like this.
To go and find the video that I saw. I can't remember who. Or I think because. I think because of this and this and.
How cool is that?
So interesting. I'm so relaxed watching this.
Something I forgot to mention earlier is that, as you can see, there's a control knob here. Apologies. There's a control knob on every channel. And what does that do? Well, for drum machine, it is probability. For monosynth, it's whatever you program it to down here, so it could be decay amp or trigger probability. I forgot to actually turn it on. And then for Ned, it is the switcher slider thingamajig. For polysynth, it's the chance. And same goes for the string synth. Alright, and that's about it from me. So, you know, there are a few little things I didn't mention, like the control knob. There's kind of a version for it for each channel strip. As you can see, there's a tweeze for the send and return effects, and a tweak for the insert effects. And also, these little boxes here, they seem to be micro-tunings, I believe. But, you know. So yeah, this was Host. I find it really fun. It's really good for just jamming and having fun, to be honest. I can also imagine it'd be pretty good for live performance. Ah, that's an idea. Anyway, go check it out. Go subscribe to Ned Rush's Patreon. It's definitely worth the money. I've been subscribed for quite some time now. And, you know, on the very rare chance that you don't watch Ned Rush, go check him out. But to be honest, if you're watching my channel, you've probably watched Ned Rush for quite some time. But, you know, just in case, go check him out. Go support him on Patreon. And if you can, also support me on Patreon. So yeah, thanks very much for watching. And see you in a couple of weeks for the next one.
Woo! See that anymore now that we're in 2023. Prattling on about authenticity in rock journalism because you were working in ways that I'd really seen anyone do. I'd heard the results elsewhere, like, you know, listening to Square Push or whatever, but it felt like quite. And learning from one another, or were you just like, your area and you were sort of quite isolated, or was it?